we're going to be doing tag team on reading the slides again. Just to start with, this card is called the Matrix of the Mind. And I went and asked our friend Google to define what matrix is. And the definition is the word matrix comes from the Latin word mater, which means mother. It originally meant uterus or pregnant animal. Today, it has many meanings, including a nurturing environment, a rectangular arrangement of numbers, or a set of conditions that allow something to grow. And this is the part of the definition that I really, really liked. It's almost like, the womb that allows things to grow.
Ra, the magician, was named as a significant archetype. However, it was not recognized that this portion of the archetypical mind represents not a portion of the deep subconscious, but the conscious mind, and more especially the will. The archetype called by some the high priestess, then, is the corresponding intuitive or subconscious faculty.
Questionnaire. Could you elaborate, please, on the nature and quality of the matrix and the potentiator? I am Ra. In the mind complex, the matrix may be described as consciousness. It has been called the magician. It is to be noted that of itself, consciousness is unmoved. The potentiator of consciousness is the unconscious. This encompasses a vast realm of potential in the mind.
Questioner, you have spoken of the magician as a basic archetype and that this seems to have been carried through from the previous octave. Would this be in order, if there is an order? The first archetypical concept for this logos, the concept that we call the magician. Ra. We now address your query as to the archetype which is the matrix of the mind. As to its name, the name of magician is understandable when you consider that consciousness is the great foundation, mystery, and revelation which makes this particular density possible. The self-conscious entity is full of the magic of that which is to come. It may be considered first, for the mind is the first of the complexes to be developed by the student of spiritual evolution.
Questionnaire. Would like to try to understand the archetypes of the mind of these logos prior to the extension of the first distortion. In order to better understand that which we experience now, I believe, that this is a logical approach. We have, as you have stated, the matrix, the potentiator, and the significator. I understand the matrix as being that which is what we call the conscious mind. But since it is also that from which the mind is made, I am at a loss to fully understand these three terms, especially with respect to the time before there was a division in consciousness. Could you expand even more upon the matrix of the mind, the potentiator of the mind, and the significator of the mind, how they differ, and what their relationships are, please? I think he's referring to before the veil, the conscious and the unconscious mind were together. So we had access to the unconscious mind, and the veil kind of put a barrier between them.
Ra, I am Ra. The matrix of the mind is that from which all comes. It is unmoving, yet is the activator and potentiation of all mind activity. The potentiator of the mind is that great resource which may be seen as the sea into which the consciousness dips ever deeper and more thoroughly in order to create, ideate, and become more self-conscious.
Questionnaire. In archetype 1, represented by tarot card number 1, the matrix of the mind seems to have 4 basic parts to the complex. Looking at the card we have, first and most obvious, the magician and what seems to be an approaching star. a stork or similar bird seems to be in a cage. On top of the cage seems to be something that seems to be very difficult to discern. Am I in any way correct in this analysis? So he's referring here to a card, a deck of cards that they were using at the beginning, which are the original black and white cards of Brotherhood of Light. In the next couple of slides, I think where I'm going to put the other card as well, so you can see all the little things that he's referring to. Ra, I am Ra. You are competent at viewing pictures. You have not yet grasped the nature of the matrix of the mind as fully as is reliably possible upon contemplation. We would note that the representations drawn by priests were somewhat distorted by acquaintance with and dependence upon the astrologically based teachings of the Chaldees.
Questioner, I have an observation on archetype number 1 made by name, and I request comment on it by Ra. I will read it. The matrix of the mind is the conscious mind and is sustained by the power of the spirit as symbolized by the star which flows to it through the subconscious mind. It contains the will, which is signified by the scepter of power in the magician's hand. All of creation is made through the power of the will, directed by the conscious mind of the magician, and the bird in the cage represents the illusion in which the self seems trapped. The magician represents maleness, or the radiance of being manifested as the creation through which each entity moves.
Ra, I am Ra. As this instrument is becoming somewhat weary, we shall not begin this considerable discussion. We would request that this series of observations be repeated at the outset of the next working. We would suggest that each concept be discussed separately, or, if appropriate, a pair of concepts be related one to the other within the concept complex. This is slow work, but shall make the eventual building of the concept complexes more smoothly accomplished. Were we to have answered the observations as read by you at this space-time, as much space-time would have been given to the untangling of various concepts as to the building up of what were very thoughtful perceptions. Maybe ask if there are brief queries at this time.
Questioner, thank you. We have some observations on the archetypes which are as follows. First, the matrix of the mind is depicted in the Egyptian tarot by a male, and this we take as creative energy intelligently directed. Will Ra comment on this? Ra, I am Ra. This is an extremely thoughtful perception, seeing as it does the male not specifically as biological male, but as a male principle. You will note that there are very definite sexual biases in the images. They are intended to function both as information as to which biological entity or energy will attract which archetype, and also as a more general view which sees polarity as a key to the archetypical mind of third density.
And here I'm showing the card that they were referring to. In the image on the right, you can see that the male figure is holding a scepter and not necessarily the globe that is depicted on the other cards. And also there are some elements on the box where the bird resides. Okay, questionnaire. The second observation is that we have a wand which has been seen as the power of the will. Will Ra comment? Ra, I am Ra. The concept of will is indeed pouring forth from each facet of the image of the matrix of the mind. The wand as the will, however, is, shall we say, an astrological derivative of the outreaching hand forming the, shall we say, magical gesture. The excellent portion of the image, which may be seen distinctly as separate from the concept of the wand, is that sphere which indicates the spiritual nature of the object of the will of one wishing to do magical acts within the manifestation of your density.
Questioner, the hand downward has been seen as seeking from within and not from without, and the active dominance over the material world. Would Ra comment on that? I am Ra. Look again, old student. Does the hand reach within? Nay, without potentiation, the conscious mind has no inwardness. That hand, old student, reaches towards that which outside its unpotentiated influence is locked from it.
Questionnaire. The square cage represents the material illusion and is an unmagical shape. Can Ra comment on that? Ra, I am Ra. The square, wherever seen, is the symbol of the third density illusion and may be seen either as unmagical or, in the proper configuration, as having been manifested within, that is, the material world given life.
Questioner, the dark area around the square then would be the darkness of the subconscious mind. Would Ra comment on that? Ra, I am Ra. There is no further thing to say to the perceptive student. The checkered portion would represent polarity. I am Ra. This is also satisfactory.
Questionnaire. The bird is a messenger which the hand is reaching down to unlock. Can Ra comment on that? Ra, I am Ra. The winged visions or images in this system are to be noted not so much for their distinct kind as for the position of the wings. All birds are indeed intended, to suggest that just as the matrix figure, the magician, cannot act without reaching its winged spirit, so neither can the spirit fly, lest it be released into conscious manifestation and fructified thereby.
Questioner, the star would represent the potentiating forces of the subconscious mind. Is this correct? I am Ra. This particular part of the image is best seen in astrological terms. We would comment at this space-time that Ra did not include the astrological portions of these images in the system of images designed to evoke the archetypical leitmotifs.
In each entity, the image will resonate slightly differently. Therefore, there is the desire upon Ra's part to allow for the creative envisioning of each archetype using general guidelines rather than specific and limiting definitions.
Questioner, there is apparently a cup which we have as containing a mixture of positive and negative influences. However, I personally doubt this. Could Ra comment on this, please? I am Ra. Doubt not the polarity, O student, but release the cup from its stricture. It is indeed a distortion of the original image. What was the original image? I am Ra. The original image had the checkering as the suggestion of polarity.
Questionnaire. Then was this a representation of the waiting polarity to be tested by the matrix of the mind? Ra, I am Ra. This is exquisitely perceptive. Questionnaire. I have listed here the sword as representing struggle. I am not sure that I even can call anything in his diagram a sword. Would Ra comment on that? Ra, I am Ra. Doubt not the struggle, O student, but release the sword from its stricture. Observe the struggle of a caged bird to fly.
Questioner, I have listed the coin represents work accomplished. I am also in doubt about the existence of the coin in this diagram. Could Ra comment on that, please? I am Ra. Again, doubt not that which the coin is called to represent, for does not the magus strive to achieve through the manifest world, yet release the coin from its stricture?
Questionnaire. And finally, the magician represents the conscious mind. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. We ask the student to consider the concept of the unfed conscious mind, the mind without any resource but consciousness. Do not confuse the unfed conscious mind with that mass of complexities which you as students experience, as you have so many times dipped already into the processes of potentiation, catalyst, experience, and transformation.
Questioner, are these all of the components then of the first archetype? I am Ra. These are all you, the student, see. Thusly, the complement is complete for you. Each student may see some other nuance. We, as we have said, did not offer these images with boundaries, but only as guidelines intending to aid the adept and to establish the architecture of the deep or archetypal portion of the deep mind.
Questioner, I would like to make an analogy of when a baby is first born. I am assuming that the matrix of the mind is new and undistorted and veiled from the potentiator of the mind and ready for that which it is to experience in the incarnation. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. Yes.
Questioner, the third statement, just as free will taps intelligent infinity, which yields intelligent energy, which then focuses and creates the densities of this octave of experience, the potentiator of the mind utilizes its connection with intelligent energy and taps or potentiates the matrix of the mind, which yields the catalyst of the mind. Is this correct?
Ra, I am Ra. This is thoughtful but confused. The matrix of the mind is that which reaches just as the kinetic phase of intelligent infinity through free will reaches for the logos, or in the case of the mind-body-spirit complex, the sub-sub-logos, which is the free will potentiated beingness of the mind-body-spirit complex. To intelligent infinity, love, and all that follows from that logos, to the matrix, or shall we say, the conscious waiting self of each entity, the love or the sub-sub-logos spinning through free will, all those things which may enrich the experience of the creator by the creator.
It is indeed so that the biases of the potentials of a mind-body-spirit complex cause the catalyst of this entity to be unique and to form a coherent pattern that resembles the dance full of movement, forming a many-figured tapestry of motion.
Now, we have a couple of quotes, which are, I don't know, I find to me that they kind of like flow a little bit better. The archetype of new mind, or the matrix of the mind, is a solid structural member, which is part of that structure which holds the potential for experiential process. Or to put that another way, it is a diagram in ideas rather than lines of drawing of the processes of perception. The new mind is all about where perception begins and all about where perception ends, because new mind is that which begins each onset of experience.
There is in this first archetype the male entity, the magician standing, and as your cards show in their redesigned form, the entity holds a sphere. This sphere represents the nearness of spirit and the immanence of the archetype of the high priestess. That is much as you would call the force which brings manifested spirit into the illusion as it potentiates thought and action in the conscious mind. The conscious mind has placed itself in this proximity with a hope, shall we say, that such potentiation shall occur.
In this placing of itself in this proximity to the subconscious mind, there is indeed a choice which has been made, much as you would make the choice for experiencing choiceless awareness. However, the choice in this case is made reincarnatively, so that the magician that is placed in proximity to the high priestess is not of its own consciousness chosen, but has been, as are each of us, placed by the grace and creative power of the one creator. The proximity, however, is that which presents the possibility of potentiation and the gaining of experience.
The matrix of the mind is a concept complex, which is a tool for the seeker of truth, as are all the images of the major arcana of your system of tarot. For each one forms a kind of library, shall we say, that allows access to various portions of the mind itself. If we look at the mind as a jewel, each concept complex of the tarot is as a facet of this jewel. The jewel, the mind itself, is brilliant in its appearance to us, for there is light in each entity, which is emanating from this jewel in such and such a fashion, according to the proclivity or tendency of each seeker to seek in its own way. Thus, some facets of the jewel of the mind are brighter than other, and the overall balance of brilliance is that which reflects or measures the seeking intensity and efficiency of each seeker. We would see the matrix and the other facets of the mind as avenues which a seeker may pursue in any manner chosen by free will, including each of those which you listed.
Let us gaze at the archetypes of the mind. Firstly, the matrix of the mind. This essence or energy is the untaught seeker, the beginner's mind, reaching and again reaching. For what? The potentiator of the mind is that which receives the desire and enables it by a process of reflection and blessing. The significator of the mind is then the result of the matrix entity or archetypical figure, reaching or intending that which can only be potentiated by the seemingly passive potentiator, that seated figure which has within the bosom great wisdom. Thusly, the matrix of the mind is able to record incoming data, and through the potentiator, once again, is able to deliver to the archetype of the catalyst of the mind, the catalyst which shall become experience.
I just want to say, I mean, it doesn't matter if you don't remember all of it or if you don't remember anything at all. We're going to do a kind of short meditation on it, and you'll find a different form of knowing comes from your own heart during that meditation.
Yeah. Okay. Lucas, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I found one thing really interesting. It is that Ras said that the matrix of the mind is basically the conscious mind which has not been potentiated yet. And I found it really interesting because, like, they said that what we think of the conscious mind is our conscious mind which has before been potentiated a few times. So the true matrix of the mind is like the conscious mind which has never been potentiated before, and that's really interesting, I thought.
Yeah, and I wonder about that as well, because there was comparison to a newborn baby, right, that didn't have any experiences yet. But I wonder if our mind is the unpotentiated mind when it comes to a new experience, and with regards to that specific new experience, it doesn't have the data yet. It's only getting the data without any biases. On the other hand, when we reach new experiences, we already have biases that were put in there by previous experiences, not necessarily that experience. So yeah, it's really interesting to ponder.
Shall I do the jar thing? I'll do the jar thing quickly. So this is a hazelnut seed, right? But it's don't think of it as a hazelnut seed. Think of it as a forest or a grove, even, you know, a hazelnut grove. It's a tree that could potentially sprout loads more hazelnuts, and an enormous grove or a forest could grow in it. Right? I put it in the jar, an empty jar, right? And let's say this represents intelligence, and I can shake it. It makes a load of noise, you know, and it's just like doesn't actually do anything, right? Except for the noise. It's the concepts that haven't actually been brought into practice. And add some water. Let's say that's the wisdom. And the noise was very jarring, but in the water, listen. It's a much softer, gentler sound. And now it's in the water, it potentially can germinate. And now if I take it and put it somewhere dark, it will eventually sprout. And then get transferred into a pot and then into my garden, and have a think about that. Like how does this action represent the matrix, the potentiator, the catalyst, and then when it becomes a tree, you know, the experience. So
Beautiful. I love that. Do you want to maybe segue to take us into meditation?
let's do the meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, and then all the other cards as well. But I'll go into the meditation now, and then we can stop the recording. Okay. So let's set the intention for ourselves to be purified, clear our minds, and relax. Picture ourselves in a comfortable space and in an empty room. We stay in that comfortable, empty room for a bit. There's nothing we need. We have everything that's required in this room. Nothing to worry about. We're just waiting. As we sit in this empty room, we see a figure appear and emerge out of the darkness. And we recognize this figure. It feels familiar. It's like an old friend that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. And this figure appears in front of you. And it's like an old friend that you love deeply, but have neglected or somehow lost touch with. And you gaze at this figure and you realize it's the magician. And you're perfectly comfortable with this magician because you recognize him as someone you used to be. And he comes to you with love. And then silence. You sit with the magician for a while, your magician. And you open your heart and your mind and your spirit to whatever the magician wants to impart to you. And you stay in that space. For as long as your attention allows. And if your attention drifts away, bring it back to the magician again. And just sit in beingness with the magician. When you're ready, thank the magician for appearing to you. And gradually ease yourself out of the meditative state.